Hey.
What up? What up?
Yeah, welcome to this week of the Carbon Footprint.
I'm Sean.
Yeah, I'm Juan. Yo, shout out to you guys for listening. It's been a little bit of a crazy week, man. So we thought definitely got to get together and talk a little bit about what's going on, and then hopefully add some levity and talk about some other things here.
Yeah, or we'll say shit that like no one cares about, and they totally disagree with us.
Yep. And if you do, drop a comment, send us some. Listen, we're not opposed to opposing views.
Absolutely.
Nope.
All right, man. George Floyd. Let's just go ahead and get right into it, right? Like, look, it's not the first time it happened. This is something that is, it's outraged a lot of people. I don't want to say that I'm outraged, but this is like, it's crazy that it still happens. So really, man, to get into it, it's like, how do we fix it? Because I got to be honest with you, man, like, and I think most people are in this boat to where it doesn't really affect us, like, personally. You see it on the news, you get that feeling of outrage, and then the next day we go back to work and we go back to our normal lives. And even though it may be still top of mind because it's in your Instagram feed or Twitter feed or what have you, like, it's still top of mind, but most of us are not doing anything about it.
Yeah, man, and I think like you're right, not the first time, right? Won't be the last. You've almost get used to it at this point, This was the one. So the Ahmaud Arbery kind of, I felt obviously really shitty about that, and it was tough. It was tough to watch that video. The George Floyd one too, man. It punched me in the stomach, man. When I heard him, especially when he's crying out for his mom, who is deceased. His mom's not even around, and to hear a grown man cry out for his mother in that situation was heartbreaking. My kids are part black, right? Part white, part Latino. So having been in situations, even with my children, in parks where I have seen other parents not let their kids play with my kids, and with an attitude or for a demeanor that clearly tells me it was the color of the skin that bothered them.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in parks.
And you have young kids, man, so this is recent.
I've been in the park with my daughter when she was, say, 2 or 3, and we were in a park, and we lived in an area in Orlando with mostly white people, to the point where, and I think I've told you the story, I've had neighbors legitimately ask me if I won the lottery. That they assumed that was the only way I could afford to live in that neighborhood, right? It's like legitimately go, and dead serious.
Well, how else would you get here?
Well, of course, right? I must have won the lottery, right? So knowing that, right? I've lived in an area like that.
Listen, Juan just put in a full-size basketball hoop in the pool.
In other words, I'm doing all right, motherfuckers. So, I'm doing, life's good. So legitimately had people ask me that, right? So, and I thought the guy was joking at the time, and then I realized he was dead ass serious, and it was like, wow. And I've had different moments like that in my life, right? But I remember one incident in particular at a playground with my daughter, and she maybe 2 or 3. Clearly, you can tell my daughter's either mixed or Latina, right? She's fair skinned, she's got the curly hair, and I remember being at a park, and it's all white kids, and we go up to the park, and my daughter's playing, and I saw parents literally take their kids out and move them to the other side of the park. To play with other white children, and if my daughter ran and followed them, they tried to move their kids a couple more times and then eventually just left. And at first I thought maybe I'm overreacting. I thought maybe they're germaphobes or maybe they're this and that, but I saw that they had no problems with other kids in the park playing with them or meeting up with them. And I will say I grew up half in New Jersey, and then the other half of my life I've spent in Florida. I experienced zero racism in New Jersey. Most of my racist encounters were all when I moved to Florida.
Do you think that you didn't experience it in New Jersey because different culture, or because you actually lived in an area where the people that you dealt with on a regular basis were predominantly Latino?
So mostly minorities, mostly right. So I lived in an area of mostly black and Latinos, and a lot of Portuguese. So I think a lot of immigrants of white descent, right? A lot of European immigrants, a lot of Jewish people in the community. So I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, right? It's predominantly Latinos and black. And then I moved to Elizabeth, New Jersey. There's a lot of Jewish people, a lot of Portuguese, but there's a lot of South Americans, a lot of Colombians, a lot of Ecuadorians, a little bit of everything, right? So I never really saw a whole lot there, and maybe that's the answer, right? It was because there was such a diverse mix of people. When I first moved here, I remember my first encounter in a gas station in Buffalo, and we all know if you're from the Orlando area or anywhere near here, you kind of know.
Don't go to Buffalo.
Yeah, don't go to Buffalo if you don't glow in the dark. And I remember someone called me boy and asked me if I was lost at a gas station there. And then just his attitude towards me clearly told me, and you know, I have a mouth for those that don't know, so my nature isn't to kind of shut up. And I think one of my uncles just looks at me and goes, just not now, man. Don't be you right now. And we saw the guy had a shotgun rack in the back of his pickup, which was not empty. And yeah, I got in my car and we got out of there. But then I was told later on, actually, the gas station was right across the street from a bar there that was known to have Klan rallies and things like that. And I think you spend enough time in Florida where I've had numerous racist encounters. This isn't as much. People say, I got Florida's diverse. Yeah, like Miami has a lot of Latinos. I think Kissimmee, Orlando does have. But there's also a lot of Florida that is not as open-minded, right? So, yeah, I think watching the George Floyd thing was a punch in the stomach. That was the first one I had seen in a long, long time, which tells me that there's something wrong there, right? That impacted me, right? Like, yeah, I got so numb to the rest of them. And when I saw this one, it just reminded me again that this is obviously still an issue. And honestly, unfortunately, I don't think we solve this in our lifetime. I think this is, if you think about even as far back as segregation, we don't even have to take it to slavery. If you think about segregation, our parents and grandparents lived through that, right? So there are people around who were raised with the idea that that was okay. And then there are raising children who think that that is okay. And so the cycle to me continues. And I don't think you break that without some kind of systemic kind of interruption where it either becomes an education thing in school, or people just miraculously decide to love overnight, but I think we're 100 years away from undoing all that, right? I think you're gonna have black people who will feel a specific type of way, and rightfully so, right? Because you took a group of people and you yanked them out of a place of their home, and you dropped them in the middle of nowhere, and you treated them like cattle. And then they're genetically in their DNA, right? They're still trying to overcome some of that. They're still trying to figure out where their place is in this new land. And I think, you know, like, you can't undo that in 100 years. I don't think you can undo that in 200 years. I think, and especially you can't undo that when there are people still alive who remember what it was like to have, you know, separate bathrooms and have, you know, separate schools and all this, and who probably still felt like that was the way, you know, and, yeah, I think the more I see this, the more I just realize we're so far apart. And unfortunately, as long as there are people around who are still raising kids who think that way, and people who refuse to acknowledge that there's a problem, it's not going away.
Well, that's also, I mean, thinking back to the, like you just said, the sort of segregation, the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King, right? That guy died when he was 39, or he was assassinated.
He was murdered, right?
But during...
And he was peaceful. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I would want to point out, Martin Luther King was peaceful, and he was murdered because we didn't like that.
But even with him, you know how much commitment that took? Like, there was a point, and I want to say it was like over a year. It was like 380 something days where he inspired people to, listen, we're not going to buy from certain businesses. We're not going to take the bus or public transportation in general, right? Like, we're going to live this way. We're going to be committed.
Yep.
And we're going to live this way, and we're going to make it hurt and hurt the businesses financially, so that they realize that, yo, like, we need these folks. And that kind of commitment, any kind of real commitment, right, just takes a lot of work. And I think that for the most part, people are just so comfortable in their lives. And listen, I am no exception.
Yeah, no, we all are.
Right?
Yep, yep.
I'm
Like I said,
no
I
exception.
forgot about this, right? Until you have to smack it in my face again. And I have, again, black children. And you have to throw it in my face again for me to realize, like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, this is still a problem.
I mean, even if you look at the trending, the trending on Twitter, it's not even trending anymore. Or I shouldn't say it's not trending. It's not like in the top 10,
No.
right? And
There was a new, we saw there was a new case today, unfortunately, that was trending. But tomorrow, that'll go away. Right? That's because that was today. Ebola from the Congo was like number 2 in
Yes.
the United States today, which shows that we're talking about that more than we're talking about this George Floyd thing, unfortunately.
Now there is, and I hate conspiracy theorists, but they're funny. So there's a conspiracy right now, right? That this is the government's way to get your mind off of COVID-19,
It's like, hey, go kill.
right? This is like, get them off of that so they can actually get their minds to getting back to work and getting back to some sense of normalcy. By doing obviously having this happen, or coupled with the launch that happened, the historic launch that happened this week, which is funny because I was talking to my wife and she brought up that conspiracy, and I'm like, the launch has been scheduled for a very long time.
Long time.
Like,
Yeah, you can't plan that like over a weekend.
yeah, that's right.
Like, hey, next week we're gonna send up this this shuttle. I'm gonna strap you guys to.
And it's always it's so funny when you get people that, like, I used to work out there, right? I used to work for United Space Alliance, which was the subcontractor prior to SpaceX that worked with NASA for the space shuttle program. And I worked out there for just about 2 years. And like when those missions get scrubbed, like due to weather, I could never understand. I mean, until it was explained to me, obviously, like, why does it take, like, if you can't launch in this hour, like, who cares?
Who
Like,
cares?
wait
It's
for
clouds.
wait for the clouds. Yeah, wait for the clouds to go, and then push it. And once you realize like what it actually takes, and it's like, oh well, the space station is actually traveling at like 17,000 miles per hour. So if you miss this window, guess what? You got a lot of catching up to do.
Shoot right back. We were just talking about that off air. Like, how impressive is and we'll get back to the George Floyd thing, not to digress from that too much, but yeah, like you said, it's moving at 17,500 miles an hour, and we literally, like, you have to leave at this precise second because we're gonna slingshot something, however many hundreds of thousands of miles towards it, and we're gonna hope to catch it. And then, by the way, we're gonna hope to like catch it, not only catch it, but like dock.
We're gonna dock.
That's so damn impressive, man. I haven't been all in on a shuttle launch in so long like I was on this one, but I was I'm a fan of Elon, and I wanted this to work so bad, and I wanted it, not only that I wanted it to work, but I wanted it to go off seamlessly, and it seems like he pulled that off, and even those guys are talking about how nice of a ride, I guess, quote unquote, it was. I don't know how what you rate that against, right, if you've only been on a couple, but yeah, shout out to those guys, man, and doing that and getting us up there. Within 5 years, man, we'll be on the moon, guarantee it. And then 10 years, we'll be on Mars.
Yeah, I think it's less than 10 now.
Might be
right?
less than 10, yeah. Yeah, I think if you get these guys back safely and all that, we'll go there. But
All right, but going back to Floyd. So, how do commitment obviously is something that's huge. That you need massive amounts of commitment from a massive amount of people.
yeah,
Right.
you need to mobilize up.
And then you really need to affect somebody's pockets. Like we talked about last week, like money's a religion. I don't care what anybody says, like that, and that's my opinion. And money's a religion. We do worship it, and if you don't think that you do, take a look at your life. And I'm not saying that maybe not everybody does, but the vast majority of us worship the dollar.
Absolutely. And
And
we
so-
make all of our life decisions based on the dollar.
Absolutely. And so, how do you get enough people to do something for long enough to where it actually affects enough businesses, and not so much the politicians, but enough businesses that perhaps support the politicians? You got to get people into place, or you got to get people that to care, that are actually in a place where they can make a difference.
I think, unfortunately, man, we it seems like this should be one of those things that politics doesn't come to play in. Just like I felt like the COVID-19, we should have left politics aside. But as a society, man, we go as our blue team or our red team or our yellow team or whatever goes. We don't. Most of us don't think for our own. Most of us don't try to have compassion for people with opposite thoughts. And so, unfortunately, unless you got both parties to sit down and say, hey, we're going to make this a priority, because one of the things I have yet to see from either candidate is, what is your plan for black people? What is your plan for, criminal justice reform? What is your plan to end or try to, you'll never end, right? So minimize police brutality or the unarmed killing or the overuse of force on civilians. That's not something that's being asked of the candidates right now. And I think, I don't know if you saw the video from Killer Mike. Killer Mike, who
I haven't seen it.
Is a rapper, from Atlanta, had a great speech. It's probably 8 minutes long. And he said, I don't know the answers. He goes, but this is your time to vote with who you place in office. This is who you pick to be the prosecutor. This is who you pick to represent you locally. And he goes, use your vote. If someone is not doing something for your community, then you withhold your vote. You don't vote. But, I think we have to ask more from those guys. And I don't, honestly, there's so much nuance in this. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know that I kept thinking of, okay, if I was in a position of some type of power and influence, what would I do? And I came down to all these little things like events, and I went, but I don't know that the long-term effect of those events are right? So I kept thinking, okay, in school, maybe instead of Black History Month, there's a class that we all have to take, and it's just Black history, but not Black history like they want us to know, the real Black history, right? Because we tend to censor that, and we don't want our children to see. I mean, show everything, show the dirty, show the ugly, show what, because I think then what you will have is a group of children who will grow up with empathy to say, wow, I think you do need to show that 12-year-old a graphic picture of someone being lynched, of someone being turned away from a water fountain or a bathroom or a restaurant or things like that, because I think those things will they'll be impactful. I think people will remember what that feels like. We went to Atlanta last summer, and I remember we did go to the Martin Luther King Museum, and that's a heavy museum to go through, and they're playing videos of him the whole time, and they're playing videos of people in crowds yelling things at him, right? And they're calling him the N-word. They're playing little snippets of people being turned away, and my kids, were asking about it. My daughter's asking, and we just told them straight up, like we try to be as honest with them as possible about anything, and I think you can really see the wheels turning, because with them, their first reaction is kind of like, but wait, I kind of fall into that category. We're like, yeah, in this time, you wouldn't have been allowed to be in the same school as, whatever, you name a friend, or, and I think kids are taught hate, right? Like you don't grow up hating Black people or white people or brown people or whatever. Like you're taught that at home. And so I think, obviously you can't undo the teachings at home, but maybe if you force some kind of curriculum in school, that's a start. I also think, I kept thinking, if I ran Orlando Police Department or Orange County Sheriff Department, what would I do? And I think you have to force, first of all, I would make it harder to become a police officer. And I think we mentioned that last week. Right. I think I would raise the standards. I think I would pay them more and raise the standards. But the other thing I thought of is, should be mandatory, whether it's once a month or once a quarter, is you hold a community barbecue between cops and maybe you go to areas of, like the most needed areas, and you hold a barbecue and you just hang out. You guys play basketball, you talk, you play dominoes, you play cards, you do whatever. I think if you come from a place of understanding, hey, I'm not here to arrest you. You have some booths on the side where you want to collect guns or drugs or whatever you want to do, but you say, no one's getting arrested here. We're all going to sit, we're going to talk, we're going to eat, we're going to break bread. I want to understand where you're coming from, and hopefully we can understand where the police officers are coming from, because I don't think this is all their problem, right? There's certainly good ones out there, but I do think this comes to a lack of understanding. right? And I think maybe something like that where you're exposed to people for a long time, because most of us stick with our circle of people, right? Whether it's brown, black, white, upper class, lower class, whatever it is, like most of us tend to stick to cliques. And so I think if you force kind of the interaction, maybe that helps. But, and I don't know. I think that's just a kind of a shot in the dark here. But
yeah, I mean, it very well could. But, even historically we've always had classes, no matter what time frame in history is like, it's always been about, at least through the past, like the agricultural revolution, right, where we sort of left from like hunter gatherers to started to settle down and develop societies. We had classes, and those classes still exist, unfortunately. Obviously we're way further ahead than obviously we've ever been, and like you said earlier, 100 years from now, hopefully we're just that much further, and this thing can be reduced, almost to nothing. I don't know if you ever get rid of it, right?
No.
You'll always have. I think humans in general, I should say humans in general, but we tend to think like some people are our equals, and some people are above us, and some people are below us, and we do, man. We treat people differently, and it's unfortunate, because I think that I would never consider myself to be that kind of person, but I would be lying if I said that when I talk to certain people, I talk to them differently. Why? Right? Are they my superiors at work? Is it the CEO of the company I work for,
yep,
versus the guy that cleans the building, right? I'm going to talk to those guys differently. Why? Like I said, it's that
we've been conditioned.
Yeah, it really is. It's just that it's that separation of class, and I don't even know that was so much taught that, but it's definitely shown, right? When you go into a workplace, nobody tells you that you have to act a certain way around a certain people, but perhaps you're influenced by the other folks, that your other coworkers. You see how they act around certain people, and maybe you just adopt that.
Yeah. I think, I'm guilty of that too. I think we've all been guilty of, like you said, maybe treating or speaking to people of a lesser class, whether that was race or monetary or whatever. Like, we catch ourselves being assholes, right? Man, I remember.
But it wouldn't even be, give me a second, it wouldn't even be being an asshole per se, right? But I may, because of the way I'm from and how I grew up, right? So I may feel really comfortable talking to the guy that's painting the building, because he looks like the people that I grew up with. And so I might talk to him differently, not necessarily lower or lesser, but in a different manner in which that I would talk to the CEO. And why do I need to sound different to this guy versus this other guy? And I've never looked at it until recently about, like, man, is that a separation of class that I'm sort of talking to people in a different manner?
Yeah, I think, you're right. I think it's maybe it's not being an asshole is the right word, but I think you catch yourself treating people either positively or negatively differently, right, because of their walk of life, or what you perceive to be their kind of spot in life. Like I would say about a year ago, we have this kind of vending service at work, these fridges, and these they're not vending machines per se, but they're like these vending fridges. You go in and you grab a sandwich and you pay for it. It's kind of like on an honor system. Anyway, we have a gentleman, a young black man, who about once a week he comes and he restocks it, right? And man, me, I talk to walls, man. I talk to everybody. I walk in, I say what's up to everybody in the hall. I'm trying to high five everybody. To me, walking down the hallway at work, I might as well be entering an NBA game. I'm high fiving everybody, right? I say what's up to this guy every time I see him, right? And I remember one morning, man, I said what's up to him, and I say, hey, what's up, man? Good morning. And he's like, oh, hey, what's up? And I kept walking, and he goes, hey, and I turn around, I'm like, oh, hey, what's up? And he never stops me. He usually like, hey, whatever, daps me up and what. And so he goes, hey, and I went, oh yeah, what's up? And he goes, thank you for seeing me. And I went,
wow.
And it hit me, man. And I went, huh? And he goes, man, you wouldn't believe, I do this every week. He goes, I do this every week. and you're one of the few people who says hi to me. He goes, hundreds of people walk by me every morning here. He goes, I can count on one hand the amount of people who either give me a head nod or a good morning or whatever. He goes, out of the 100 that walk by, most ignore me. And he goes, and that includes even if I just go, hey, good morning or hi, most of them ignore me. And that, I remember that day, it bothered me a lot, man. I remember telling everybody, like, y'all better say fucking what's up to everybody. Like, it just, I think I'm big about that as it is at work. I think I'm big on regardless of position, like you said, the janitor or whether you're the CEO, is I'm gonna treat you with the same respect. And I remember him saying that, but again, it just goes to show you we have such a, and I don't, and I can't say that, I work with a bunch of racist people and that,
no,
they
I'm
didn't
sure
say what's up.
I'm sure you don't.
I think, a lot of that is people who are just busy or going about their day. And I'm sure some of it is people who feel like they're too good to say hello, whether because of the position, right? Or the color of the skin or whatever it is, right? But I think...
but is it that they feel too good? Or is you think that maybe it's just like when you're at work, and I've seen this from other people, if you don't matter, right? Like the guy coming into the vending machine, he doesn't, quote unquote, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Like, I don't have to be nice to you because I may not even be like an outgoing person. I may not even be a nice person, right? And so when I'm at work, I'm going to be nice to the person that I need to be. And then maybe the person that I don't need to be, I won't speak to. Like, I know people like that.
Yeah. No, and I think there's definitely some part of that, right? I think, one of the things, and you can't always be gung-ho, right? Like, we all have bad days. I have days, listen, where I walk by people and I don't say a word because I'm just having a bad day, right? But I think it just goes to show how something as simple as like a good morning or whatever, it's someone like him felt compelled to say like, hey, thank you for seeing me, right? Like, so you must think it wasn't just at my office. It probably happens to him all the time. Right. And I have a hard time not thinking that the color of his skin has something to do with that, right? And I, to your point, I think it's the color of the skin mixed with what we perceive to be his position in life, right? So
that guy might have.
He might own that vending thing. I don't know.
Crap load of vending machines, yeah. And he's making more than most of the people in your office.
Yep,
absolutely.
Right, but we see that and we just assume, right? And so,
that it's the class, right? He's not an accountant. He's not he's not an executive. He's not a whatever, right? Doesn't mean the guy doesn't make money.
But I think, I think this is all the same as, just goes down to not understanding each other. Malcolm Gladwell, his last book, Talking to Strangers, I've
not read that.
Has some great chapters in there. And he talks about the Sandra Bland thing. He talks about a couple of other incidences, that resulted unfortunately in the killing of an unarmed black person. And one of the things he tries to drive home with his book is that a lot of this stuff is driven by lack of communication and understanding. And so I think basically in that case, what he was saying is by the officers not talking and trying to understand Sandra and her scenario, is that they went off on their own and did their own thing. And had they had a second, to talk to her. So, Sandra Bland is coming from, I guess like an overnight trip from wherever she was coming from to a new state to start a new life, right? So she's tired, right? She's probably trying to figure out how she's going to get a job. I can't remember if she had some kind of medical issue, but some of that. So obviously a frustrated individual, right? And then she's approached by cops. She's a smoker. So innately certain things that smokers do, maybe the fidgeting or the wanting a cigarette. It's like, it's not I think cops took her smoking in front of them as being disrespectful. But, I think what Malcolm tries to take home is that if smokers, that's where they find their comfort. And maybe in her mind, it was like, I need this, I'm going to smoke right now and I can have this conversation with you because this moment right here is uncomfortable for me. I'm out of my element. This is how I cope, so I think it was things like that he brings to life, and he calls out a bunch of and I don't want to misquote Malcolm, but he brings out a lot of these scenarios, and he brings out these things where he just goes, if someone would have just stopped and listened, and then someone would have talked, because in some scenarios people didn't talk, right? They just their rage just kind of came out, and it just a lot of it is about how not every scenario, but a lot of these scenarios, if people just took the time to talk and understand each other, it would you could certainly take some steps forward, or people would have some empathy towards what we're all going through. We've all had shitty days, and so
and there goes that word again, right? Empathy. Like that's really like the key, right? Like, even you don't have to walk in someone's shoes. You don't have to live in the same neighborhood. You don't have to live that person's life. But if you just understand that everybody has their own crap going on, really. I mean, whether they live in your neighborhood or in a different neighborhood, like we all have different shit going on, and no one's living your life, and no one's living mine. And if we just take the time to just take a moment and just try to understand what this person is going through, I think a lot of this stuff it doesn't go away, but it just helps for the understanding.
Yeah.
And I do, I think both of you and I both have like police officers as both friends and family, and I guess I'm biased, right? I think that these guys are good guys, but I've heard some of them talk differently, sort of about civilians, and I know it's because of what they see on a daily basis, and it's because of what they do and what they deal with on a daily basis. So I'm empathetic even to that, to that point of view.
Yeah.
It's not the point of view that I carry, but my life is not like theirs. And if and again, if we just all just take a step back and just try to understand each other, man, like that's really I would think is the foundation of what it takes to eventually move past this.
Yeah, I think no, you're right. We both know cops, and we both know some of them have certainly shared their feelings with us, but it's what they I don't want to say perceive, because it is their reality, right? But it's what they perceive all of society to be, is their interactions in maybe pockets, right? And again, you have to think about, if you're a cop, and depending on where you're a cop, right, your only exposure to human beings, for the most part, they're negative interactions, right? And so I think I can have empathy with the fact that you're dealing with shitheads all day, most of the time, right? And then you also, I can have empathy to the fact that you leave home every day and you don't know if you're coming back. Right, that's most of us won't know what that's like, right? I don't leave for work every day wondering if I'm going to come back ever, right? Like, I mean, I know there's car accidents, all this other stuff, that's not what I'm talking about. I never go and say I'm going to do a job that could potentially get me killed.
And it could be on some bullshit, right? You could literally just have a traffic stop, somebody, whether it's speeding or running a red light, or just an illegal turn, or, what have you, illegal U-turn, right? A routine traffic stop. And your life could be over because that person in the car is going through some stuff, and who knows what, right? The gamut is just, it's crazy. So to your point, like, those guys and gals don't know if they're coming home.
Yeah, and I think and I can certainly have empathy for that. I think it's super important, I think, to understand that they're coming from a place where every situation they walk into several times a day, right? Unless you're a cop in the middle of nowhere, every day, a couple times a day, and I don't know what the number is, but it's definitely a few times a day, you're confronted with the possibility that your life ends, or that you're going to have to take a life, right? Because it's kill or be killed, and unfortunately in some scenarios. And I think, I don't know what the answer is in terms of training, because I've never been in that scenario, right? And I think if I put myself in the shoes of, if I feel like someone may pose a threat to me, I'm going to react as quickly as possible, right? Because I think instinct takes in, like our human instinct of survival takes in at that point. But I don't think that's what we saw with George Floyd. I don't think that's what we saw with Ahmaud Arbery. Those weren't even cops. I think what we're seeing now is just people having a blatant disregard, I think, for those folks. I think they're looking at them as beneath them. The guy, I don't even want to say the cop's name, man, because I don't want to give him any notoriety. Yeah, but in the George Floyd case, but has his knee on the guy's back and he has his hands in his pocket. He's chilling. Like, he's literally chilling and killing, right? Like, that's the he's like, you can't even argue. Like, I felt like my life was in danger. Like, your hands are in your pocket, man. And the guy is telling you that he can't breathe. No, and all these other people are pleading with you, and at that point I can only think that you either don't care, right? You don't believe, you have a blatant disregard for this man's life, or it's your ego. Maybe deep down inside he felt like, I should probably let up, but all these people are recording me and they're pleading with me, and then at that point, the ego kicks in with, like, I'm not gonna let go because I don't want these people to think that they got to me, right? And
dude, Ryan Holiday. If you want a good insight about ego, Ryan Holiday has a book. It's called Ego is the Enemy. It's an easy read. It's a great book to pick up. That dude, man, and he talks about that. It's like a lot of the shit that we deal with is ego based.
Oh yeah,
ego either will put you in a bad position in a lot of scenarios.
I think, yeah. I mean, I think if we all think back on our life and on certain decisions we made, either good or bad, ego certainly plays a part in a lot of it, right? I think whether it's the arrogance of thinking you can pull something off, or you're deserving of something, or and sometimes that's good, right? I think you do need to have somewhat of an ego, right? You need to approach life with a little bit of swagger, right? And I think there's an upside to that. But where it comes to bite you in the butt is where you have these scenarios. Like I saw people.
There's a fine line between confidence and ego.
Yep. And I, yeah, you're right. And like one of the common themes I see all the time is people saying, they're shitty accountants and they're shitty this and they're shitty that. It's like, yeah, well, their job doesn't entail people's lives, right? So you can't hold them to the same standard. I think, a shitty accountant getting you, audited by the IRS is not the same as a guy whose job we say, here are weapons that can take a life. And we go, it's up to you to decide whether or not. And here are these scenarios where we think you might need to use these, but you do the best you can. And
yeah, some of those things are open to interpretation.
Absolutely, it's all subjective, right? It's all subjective. I think, again, I can't argue with what someone feels is or isn't a threat. What I can say is if in a scenario like George Floyd's, where you're looking at a guy and he's unarmed and there's 4 of you, if you can't take that guy down on your own without using lethal force, you shouldn't have been a cop. If your training is such that between 4 of you guys, you can't take out a guy like that and get him in a car, get him arrested, you shouldn't have been a cop. I think you and I, you probably could have taken out a guy like that who didn't have a weapon. We probably could have, held him down, or at least
especially once he's in cuffs.
Absolutely. Once you have him in cuffs, put him in the back of a car. I think that and we didn't even touch on the Central Park thing. Again, I don't want
guy with the lady with the dog.
With the dog, absolutely. And you know what stuck out to me the most in that was the fact that she immediately goes.
Hold on, you got to tell the story.
Okay. So for those that don't know, there's a man in Central Park. He's a black man. He is bird watching, and this area of Central Park, I can't remember what it's called. I want to say the Ramblings or something like that. But it's an area in Central Park which it's designated as a nature and bird watch area. So the rules, and there's signs posted everywhere that say all your dogs must be leashed, and that's so that they don't kind of interfere with the wildlife there. So there's this man. He's bird watching there. It's early morning. Central Park. There's a lady who's white. She has her dog. Her dog is off the leash. And he asks her very politely, because he has this on video. He says, hey, can you please leash your dog? I don't want them to interrupt this. We're watching birds. They're going to scare away the wildlife. And she refuses. And she goes all in. I think the guy keeps treats in his pocket because he says this is an issue all the time. And what he finds is that if he takes treats out and offers it to the dog, most people would just grab their dog, leash him, and run off, because most people don't want you to feed their dog. They don't know what you're feeding their dog, right? So I guess, he kind of says like, hey, he's got these. And then so she then grabs the dog, but then proceeds to grab her cell phone and says, I'm going to call the cops on you, and calls the cops, and is in hysterics, telling the cops that she goes, an African-American man is threatening my life. And she tells him, she goes, I'm going to call the cops. And he goes, okay, go ahead. And he goes, I don't know what you're going to tell them. And she goes, I'm going to tell them an African-American man is threatening my life. And that right there told me she knew what the cops would do, right? Like she made an assumption based on the behavior, at least thought, right? She goes, there's enough history here to tell me if I'm a white lady and I call the cops and I say this African-American man is threatening my life, that they're probably going to come, and do whatever, right? She also took the assumption that he was going to be scared because she knows that they know that they are afraid of cops, or should be, right, because of the way they're treated. So she's already made all these assumptions,
or at least what the media portrays,
right? So in that in itself, she's already taking these this stance that I'm going to scare you by using the police. And then she gets on the phone and starts hysterically screaming and telling the 911 operator that this man is threatening her life and all this stuff. And long story short, she gets her dog taken away from her because she's choking him this whole time. And nothing happens to the guy, but you go, imagine if he didn't have video of that interaction, where he clearly did nothing wrong, and all you hear is a white lady screaming through a phone that an African American man is threatening her life. And you think about how that scenario could have ended differently. And, you know, this guy comes out, he's Harvard educated, I believe, and like has worked as an editor for Marvel or something. So clearly intelligent guy, you know, it didn't discriminate. If you are up at whatever time of the day in Central Park in New York, like you're not broke. Watching birds, like you're not broke. I'm just gonna throw that out there right now. You're not broke. So, it doesn't discriminate your class, right? I think in that scenario, being black was enough. And, you know, it was a shame because I think it just showed what society thought. And she figured, I'm going to weaponize that. I'm going to use his blackness against him because I know that he's going to be scared if I turn the cops. And kudos to this guy for keeping his cool. He has the entire encounter on video. And in fact, she kind of charges him and he backs up and goes, hey, please get away from me. But, you know, I think about if this guy didn't have that video, how that scenario plays differently.
Right. How does that play out?
Yeah,
and maybe it doesn't play out any different, right?
Maybe not. You know, you would hope. You would hope not.
Right? You would hope not.
Because again, you know, there's thousands of interactions like that a day, right? There's thousands of whether
that
it's
we
our
don't
neighbor,
hear about.
that we don't hear about. That people argue, whites amongst whites and blacks amongst blacks, and vice versa, and mixed cultures and stuff. There's arguments that happen every day that have nothing to do with race and disagreements and things like that, and those are never going away. But I think that one was especially powerful because of her choice of words. I think that she specifically, you know, when he goes, what are you going to tell them? And she goes, that an African American man is threatening my life. She didn't say that a man is threatening my life. The thing, she makes it a point to say, I'm going to tell them this, and you should be afraid of that. Right. You know, and
there was probably a piece of him that was.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Right? Like he's probably going, okay, I have this thing, you know, I have my phone, I'm videotaping all of this, so I have less to worry about. But I mean, and this is just my perception, to say that he was unafraid or not worried at all, it was
zero chance.
It's probably.
I would even be afraid if I was him of having that cell phone out and recording when they come, that they're gonna mistake that for something, for a weapon. I would literally be that afraid. Again, I don't know how you as a black man. A black woman in this case, because we also saw, you know, they broke into the apartment of a black woman and murdered her in her sleep, that I would be comfortable with any interaction with the police, right? That I just don't see it ending my way. And it's a shame because, again, I think the overwhelming majority are good people and mean well and legitimately want to protect and
absolutely.
See shitty things every day and have to make unfortunate decisions every day. But what you saw here wasn't a lack of judgment. What you saw in this case was blatant disregard for another human life that you can only assume was because he was black.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it would help if they would, and I think that Minneapolis did a better job than what we've seen in the past, where it was like, okay, these guys got fired. This guy is now charged with like second. Is it second?
It was
and
third degree murder initially. I think you absolutely upgrade that here with the independent autopsy. So the first autopsy, which again adds another layer of this, the first autopsy done by the county says that he did not die from asphyxiation. They couldn't find an underlying cause of death. They hire an independent coroner who says the manner was definitely asphyxiation. And I tend to believe it because I remember when the one came out a couple of days ago, I told a friend of mine, I can't remember, and maybe it's someone from work. It could have been us, maybe, I don't know, but I remember saying, they went, well, you know, people kept saying, well, he can talk. If you say I can't breathe, you can breathe. And, you know, the autopsy already said that it wasn't that. And I remember thinking, yeah, but your knee is on the main artery that's going up to his brain. So if you're cutting off blood supply, you're cutting off oxygen to his brain, which in itself is a form of asphyxiation, you know, like, you can
still speak.
Of course, exactly, because you're not gasping for air, right, you're getting a lack of oxygen to your brain. And so I think that's what this independent coroner said, was that he died from asphyxiation. And it had to do with the lack of oxygen supply. They're saying it was blood loss to his brain and a couple of other factors. It was, they said the fact that his arms were tied behind his back, restrict blood flow. The fact that there was a knee on him, on the back and on the neck, restrict blood flow. So it was all these factors, the handcuffs, all these things that basically said all these things contributed to his death. And they ruled it a homicide. So I think in that case, you almost have to upgrade it to murder 2. I can't remember exactly what the criteria is for murder 2, but I don't think you can say. So murder 3 assumes that it was kind of an accident, that you were negligent, I guess. And I think there's enough there, man, to charge this guy with almost purposely murdering this guy.
Personally, man, I don't think that he did it intentionally, but I do think that he had a blatant disregard for this guy's safety.
And so I think that's why you upgraded, right? Like I think you saved the manslaughter for the kid driving a vehicle who has a blatant disregard for the safety of other people and then maybe hops over a curb and hits someone, right? Like I think this is I think when you watch the video, it's hard to argue that he didn't blatantly disregard this guy's life. That, when people pleading you with an EMT telling you, hey, and then when someone goes in and checks his pulse and goes, hey, he has no pulse, and you still keep your knee on, to me, I think that's enough. Who knows? I think this might be the one that changes things. I think this was the one that I saw the most amount, even people who in the past would have were kind of anti the protests and anti this movement, the Black Lives Matter movement. I've seen a couple of those people now go, wow, this one was bad. And maybe this is the one that wakes some people up. I don't think so. I think it's the one for the week, right? And I think, by next week, we all go back to our lives. And that's why while I'm not in support of violence, right? I don't want people to die through riots. I'm okay with burning down a building or two, man. I got to be honest. I just
don't think that burning down the buildings accomplishes anything.
It doesn't. You're right. It doesn't. But we're talking about it. We're paying attention.
Yeah, true.
And I think, to going back to last week where we were saying people's dollars speak, I think, and I heard people say like, oh, some of these business owners, they worked their whole lives to build this, and look, now it's gone. Like I took away a building, a business, you took away this guy's life. To me, there isn't a comparison.
But wasn't one of the buildings like a Target building?
Yeah, they'll figure it out. Target's going to be fine.
Target's good.
Yeah, Target's good. Target's insured. That's not costing Target a damn thing because their insurance is going to pay for it, right? And to me, I'm okay if you're not killing innocent people. I think that's where I have an issue. But to me, again, I wish it didn't come to that, unfortunately. I think, it's the Malcolm X thing, right? By any means necessary. Kaepernick took a knee and we were outraged about that. People tried the peaceful thing. We were outraged about that. I think you go, all right, man, what's going to get your attention? Like you're not paying. So, hopefully this is it. Hopefully people, this was enough to bring people to the table to go, what do we need to do? On both sides. I'd like to start by seeing the presidential candidates lay out their plan for, I think there should be some kind of federal oversight on police forces and mandatory, compliance and standards and reviews that they need to go through if there is a use of force. Again, I'm not smart enough to know the answer, man. But
I hear you, man. All right, man. That's we gotta lighten this up a little bit.
Listen, who was real happy this shit went down? The Asians, man. They had a rough couple months there. And they were like, holy shit, man. Thank
God
like,
the focus is on the American white male.
Yep. They're like, can we get people outside again so people can do dumb shit that they were doing before to take the attention off of us, man? Fuck, man. Shout out to Asians. Love you guys, man. They had a rough couple months with this whole COVID thing and the racism that went to that. And now, they got to be back in the bushes going, woof.
Dude,
that's a close one.
And I swear, man, every time Trump gets up and speaks about COVID-19, he makes it a point to be like, we know whose fault this was. Oh man, guy, man,
it's so great, man.
And listen, I don't want to get into the presidential candidates, but man, Biden is gonna be the guy, right? I mean, is he senile?
Like, I think there's legitimately something wrong with him.
Bro?
I think there's legitimately something wrong with him.
He better pick a hell of a running mate.
Yep. I think that's what it boils down to, because you're picking the VP. You're not picking him, right? Because there's something off there, man. I think the other day he was telling people don't forget to vote for Senate or for him, at Senate or something. Like, he's gone, man. He's gone, man. And listen, I don't, I think we're both kind of cut the same. We don't go for either party, man. We go for the candidate that is offering the most or whatever benefits us at the time or whatever it is. We won't get into that, but I think, Biden can't be the answer.
Man, I you know what? And I feel bad because a lot of people that family and friends of mine, right? Close people, a lot of them, they just want Trump gone, right? For whatever, and everybody has their own reasons for that, and I'm gonna get into that. But man, every time they talk about it, I'm going, ooh, like, who are you gonna replace him with, man? Like, you guys picked the guy who can't remember shit right now.
Mm-hmm. Like, the question to him about the whole inappropriate touching and stuff, and he's like, I don't remember doing that. I believe him. I don't think he does.
Like, legit.
Like, he legitimately does it. Dude, he's
like, they bring out the accuser. He's like, who's that?
Who's that? And he's serious. He could pass a lie detector test on that shit right now. That's you on video. No, that's not. I never even seen the camera.
Remember that. They got them hologram things now.
Tupac was Coachella last week. Last year, Tupac was at Coachella. No way, that's me. Oh, man. Yeah, I don't know. Dude, what that showed me is how shitty is that job that's the best we can roll out. Like, every time I watched the debates, I went, holy shit, no one young and smart wants that job.
There were a couple of candidates, man, but I guess nobody wanted them. I don't know.
Yeah, dude. I remember looking at that going, wow, in a nation where we've come up with some of the most brilliant ideas, with the progress we've made over 200 years, right? More than any other country in the world. You go, the best we can come up with for president was Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
Dude, I think that the really smart people, they just go into the private sector.
Yep. Of course.
And they just
of course.
Like, I'm not doing that.
I don't even think Trump wanted this job, man. I think Trump wanted to get higher ratings on his show and his stuff. And I think he wanted to prove a point, right? The ego thing, right? And I think he's sitting there now going, what the fuck? Like, you know what, those I'm gonna miss the tweets and I'm gonna miss the shit talking when he's not president anymore, because the entertainment factor was at an all-time high, because you definitely saw things you thought you'd never see from a president, and say what you want to say on a daily basis. He didn't fail to deliver ever. And say what you want. If this dude goes back and does The Apprentice, I'm fucking watching. I'm watching.
It'll be number one show again.
It will be. It absolutely will be. And I'm like, again, if someone who doesn't agree with most of his things as a human being, I don't necessarily agree with him, but yeah, I think there's no denying that from a marketing perspective, the guy was a genius and managed to get into office, I think, because of that marketing genius. Now, I don't think he's a smart businessman per se. I think, obviously he made some good decisions along the way. He was kind of I'll argue that if you start with a $10 million, I guess sponsorship, and you multiply that by 100, most of us started with 0 and multiplied that to whatever we did today. So he did what most of us do. Whatever. I don't know enough about his entire thing, but I will say that from a marketing side, he was genius, man. I think this whole thing was a giant marketing move, and he pulled it off. And I understood it. I think this here shows why, obviously, I think there's a racist factor. I think that's why he'll never denounce racist, because I think he understands that there's a good chunk of his base that is. And so while he will never outright go and say, hey, these people, because I think he understands that a lot of his base is racist. And I think for us, there's a good part of the country that is racist. And so I think whether they're outwardly racist or they'll say it out loud, I think, so obviously that's why I think he'll never come out and go like, oh, shame on those guys for being, there's, like, as much shit as people give him for being an idiot, if you look at his tweets and you look at his videos and stuff, there are words that he used deliberately, especially when he's referring to like Klan members or things like that. Like he's very careful on how he uses words. It's very intelligent. It almost looks like a PR guy wrote it, right? But then when it's not that.
But then when he goes on Twitter.
Yeah.
The PR guy takes the day off.
The PR guy takes a day off, and he uses words like thugs. And again, I think there's a deliberate, something deliberate about that delivery. I think there's a base there that he's trying to get to, kind of almost subliminally going, yeah, guys, I'm with you. Who knows? But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see this election, man. I honestly don't think he wants to win. I think that's why he's doing all kinds of shit. He's like, hey, inject yourself with bleach. I don't know, drown yourself in a pool that's full of chlorine. Like, it'll kill it. Like, I think he's shooting out everevering. He's like, what the fuck do I have to do for you people not to vote for me?
It kills it in a minute.
Yeah. Unfortunately, as we keep letting Alabama and Mississippi vote, he's gonna win. He's out there like just throwing out all kinds of crazy shit. He's like, wait, the sun, right? The UV light. If you stick a light bulb inside someone like that, it'll definitely kill it, right? Like, I think this is him going like, please, guys, don't fucking vote for me. Like, or that he's trying to kill off the people that would vote for him, right? Like the low IQ. He's like, if they try this and they're not around come November. But man, I don't know. Is then we get a president that's like senile? Is gonna? I don't know what the answer is, man. It's gonna be.
If he doesn't win, and if
I'd be shocked.
And if Biden wins, which by the way, I thought there was something that I would be too, actually. I'm not a Trump supporter, but
me neither. But I'd be shocked.
I would, yeah, just based on the competition. But you know what? Maybe enough people will be, enraged by what's been happening lately and some of the things that he's been saying, and
maybe
show up to vote. I mean, hey.
Show up. Yep. I think that, and I think how this whole COVID thing plays out from here on out, it's going to play a big factor. I think if we have a
relapse,
yeah, relapse. That's right.
It's a relapse.
We're using relapse. If we have a relapse of this, that's awful enough. I think, and I hope not. I wouldn't sacrifice lives over the politics, right? So I hope not. I hope we kind of get through this and we lose as few people as possible. But I think if it's bad and people go, well, shit, you reopen the country, maybe that causes them. But and we have this conversation all the time. I think when people are pro, either blue team or red team, right, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We know
people that go, I vote this party regardless.
Yep.
It doesn't matter.
And man, I don't think it'll matter. I don't think it'll matter. I think he'll keep trying to lose it, and it won't happen. Because if you're him, you're going 4 more years. That puts me close to 80. I gotta fucking deal with this. Like, I don't think if you're that guy, man, why?
Wouldn't you love to see him write a book after this? But like a truthful one.
Oh, I would.
Right?
Absolutely.
Just to lay it all out.
That, or if you had cameras, actually no, not even cameras following him around, because I want to get in his head. Absolutely. If he wrote a book and it was uncensored and it came out that like, man, fucking, I was just trying to prove a point and I was just saying shit, and because I think that's the truth there. And he's such a narcissist that a book will come out inevitably, because I think he's going to want to kind of tout himself. And that may be hard for me not to read, or I'll probably wait to hear about what he actually gets into, because I don't want fluff. I want him to be authentic. I want him to be honest. I'd love to see a book maybe from someone inside of his party that's unbiased, and gives you like a true account, just because I think it's fascinating. It's a fascinating time in history, man, where we're going to look back on this and go, yeah, man, we voted in a real estate mogul to office who had a TV show where he was firing people. He was talking about grabbing women by the pussy right before that, but, that's not that bad.
It wasn't for the
money.
Who
doesn't say that?
Right?
No,
it wasn't for the money. So
it's
like,
an ego trip.
It is an ego trip.
When you're him, there's only so much that you have not accomplished, right? And I think when you're at that billionaire status, there's nothing in this life that's out of your grasp, right? I think the power that comes with that, the access and all that, there's nothing. So I think the only other pursuit that's, we talk about this all the time. Like, how do you get that adrenaline flowing? How do you feel alive? I think for someone in that position, it's what's the ultimate power? What's the ultimate win? What's the ultimate ego trip? The slinging of the dick, if you will, of, yeah, like, this is it.
I'm the guy.
And I think that's it, right? Like, I see Mark Cuban's ass all the time about running, and I don't think he'll do it. But that would be interesting.
But I wouldn't be surprised.
No, eventually the ego is going to win over, right? I think eventually your kids are grown, they're out of the house. I think you've accomplished as much as you can in business. You have access to do anything and everything you want. And then eventually you go, I'm not fulfilled. I need someone to stroke my ego really quick. Maybe, just maybe, I'll take a dabble in this for the 4 years. Like, I think it's going to happen eventually. He keeps saying no, and I think the more he says no, the more, again, you're not that uber competitive and that uber successful in life, and you don't have that competitive drive that goes, I can win that, and you don't give it a shot.
And I tell you what, when Obama first came in, fairly young guy, right? When he left after 8 years, I swear he aged about 20 years, right? And earlier I mentioned Martin Luther King. When he passed, when he was assassinated, in his autopsy, they said that his heart, so he was 39 years old, and he had a heart of a 60-year-old.
Wow. I didn't know that.
And they attributed it to the stress of the civil rights movement, of being the guy. Right. So, and there's something to be said. And like I said, I thought about Obama because I was like, man, watching him go through those 8 years, like he looked tired after the 8 years. Obviously the normal, body features that change, like the gray hair. Right. Your gray hair comes in. You get a couple more wrinkles. But he definitely looked like he aged more than 8 years.
Obama looked like our neighborhood mechanic by the time he was done. Hey, man. Let me get a 6-pack for that carburetor.
That's it.
He looked beat up.
How much
man.
for a brake change?
How much? Yeah.
6-pack and $20.
And say what you want. I think, I think history will be kind to Obama, politics aside. So let's take out the politics, whatever team you're on. I think when you look back, and to your point about that pressure, right? If you're Obama, first black man, right? You had to be absolutely perfect in every way, shape, or form, because, like it or not, you're leading the way for other black men or other minorities in general to follow you, and you go, I couldn't be the first one and fuck it up for everyone else. So
could you imagine if it was sort of like Trump but opposite?
Oh,
he would have been.
He would have never won. He would have been. There's zero chance that if Obama would have had multiple baby mamas, he doesn't get it, and that in itself is our racial bias of going like not gonna do it. It would be like stereotypical. I think most people would find that as an excuse to not vote for Obama. And meanwhile with Trump, it's like, what do you expect? He's a billionaire. That's what he does. It's like again, we will defend. Man, it's a perfect description of it, man. Our political figures are Jesus. No matter what Jesus does, you will follow, right? Jesus could flip tables. He set stuff on fire. He could, and you go, but he turned water into wine. And, you will find, there's things if whatever, not to get biblical, but there are things in there that we will follow because we will say like, no, he
that's my guy.
That's my guy.
Yep.
And no matter what, and you will follow. And I look at that and I go, yeah, like Trump is Jesus to some of these people. Is like, and Obama too, right? Like, I think people will follow you because you are the guy, quote unquote. And no matter what you do, we will find an excuse to defend it. But yeah, if the shoe was on the other foot, if you take Trump's words, actions, history, and you flip flop it into Obama, zero chance he ever gets elected. And that in itself speaks to the racial divide in this country, because it will absolutely 100% be because of the color of his skin. So, it would have been nuts, man. But yeah, Obama, man, I go, the kind of pressure that must be like to be the first person there and then go, I don't want to fuck this up, because what if it's 100 more years or 200 more years before this happens again, and I have to be absolutely perfect because you didn't hear of one thing. You didn't hear of an ex coming out. You didn't hear of, a scandal. And now all the Obamagate stuff's coming out. I don't know enough about that stuff to really get into it, but he was pretty much as unscathed as you could be obviously from a political standpoint, no, but I think from a scandal standpoint,
right.
Made it through pretty much.
He was
unscathed.
like the Derek Jeter of president.
Shout out to Derek Jeter, man, sending out gift baskets and stuff, If you don't know what we're talking about, Google Derek Jeter and gift baskets and have fun going down that rabbit hole. And that's 3 weeks in a row we've mentioned something about baseball. MLB, I want that check. It's wild, man. Yeah, man, this was heavy this week, man, but I think it was stuff that we had to get into.
Yeah, actually, man, I was hoping to get into some of that and some of the more of that shuttle stuff, man, because like I said, I used to work out there, and I gotta
Take 5 minutes again.
You want to take 5 on this
Yeah,
one?
let's take 5 on this one, man. We
All
wrap
right,
this
man.
up. Take 5 on the shuttle, man.
I just gotta
End this
say
on a little bit of a positive note, man. It's kind of
I
heavy.
don't even know this is gonna be positive, but so I told you I used to work for United Space Alliance. So for the listeners, if I have a bad transition, I'm sorry. We are off of politics. We are off of racial inequality. We are off of all of that. We are on to the launch that happened this week, right? So back in 2005 to 2007, I worked for United Space Alliance. Good job. I know going into it, I was, hoping, I was like fresh out of college and thinking like, oh man, this space shuttle program, right? And I'm in the IT field, so I'm thinking technology, right? Like this is gonna be the top of the heap. When I get in there, it's like 30-year-old technology, a lot of paper process. It was actually and I did like a QA role. So it was basically making sure that the IT guys that did all of the programming and stuff followed a process. And that process was very long and stringent and it involved a lot of people and a lot of meetings and very boring. But before I left there, I actually I got to see a launch. And prior to that, I stayed behind because I lived about an hour away. So I stayed behind to watch these launches, and 3 of them got scrubbed. And every time they got scrubbed, the one-way highway home would be like people would stop there along the way to watch the launch.
Oh, and they pull off to the side of the road, right, on the beach line. Yeah.
And then so when they would scrub it, then all of those cars get back on the road and start going. Dude, it would take that hour drive. It would take me 3 hours. So here I was. So now at the point when I actually got to see the 4th launch, because the 3 prior it was a wrap. And each one took me 3 hours to get home. So I already have like 9 hours invested into seeing this launch. Fine. I mean, even my coworkers at the time were going like, dude, I think you're the bad luck. Like, stop staying. Just go home. So anyway, I get a chance. I finally stay, or I stay the 4th time. It goes off. Where I worked was right next to the vehicle assembly building, which for the listeners, anybody who has never been out there, it is, whenever they talk about NASA, it is like the building that they show. And it's a really big building where they assemble the shuttle, maybe assemble the rockets there now.
That's where you see those double doors part, right?
The double doors with the American
rockets.
flag.
Yeah, with the
American flag on the building,
that's
right?
Better.
That's the one. And I worked at the building like right next to it. So I got to stand in front of the vehicle assembly building as this thing went off. And it's about 3 miles away. And it was awesome, right? So it's awesome. It goes up. And that power, like that thrust, like it bounces off of the building and literally rattles your clothes. So if you've had a chance to do it, I would definitely say do it. But dude, I remember one of my coworkers. So we watch this thing go up, right? And it goes and goes into the atmosphere, right? It's all over. The moment that it's over, I'm going, I got a 3-hour drive home. But and right at that moment that I'm thinking that, this lady that had been working out there for like 20 years plus turns around to me and looks at me and she goes, wasn't that amazing? And I was like, get me out of here. Where's my car?
All you can think about is a 3-hour drive back home. And there's only one way back from, or maybe 2,
man,
but
I
it's
tried.
really
no,
one
I
way.
tried
Yeah.
the other way.
Yeah.
It's not. everybody knows about the two ways,
Yep.
right? It doesn't matter. So
Both sides are full.
3
I've
hours.
never done it in person. I want to do it. I told myself I was going to go do this one. And then I said, it's Saturday. And I thought about maybe I'll go really early to the beach. I'll try to just watch it from the beach out there, from Cocoa Beach. And then I'll just stay long and head home like in the evening. I'll go eat dinner or something out there. And I thought about that and got caught up on some other things and we didn't do it. But I've never seen it and be ashamed to live this close and not go watch it. For you guys listening who aren't from here, we are maybe 50 miles. So it's a 45-minute drive to the Cape Canaveral, where they do the shuttle launches. In fact, this stuff is so impressive. When they enter the atmosphere, when they're coming back, your houses shake here. Like you can feel the rattle and the boom. I know here, I can definitely feel when the shuttles enter orbit again, your entire house shakes here. And it's 50 miles away. I mean, it's just.
And I don't know how this is going to be, right? So now they have the dragon.
The dragon,
right?
yeah. The what is it? The Crew Dragon.
The Crew Dragon. So that's docked at the space station right now. From what I've read, they're staying somewhere between like 6 to 16 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't really know exactly when they're gonna come back. So the mission is not gonna be a true success until they've actually,
made it back
come back
and
home.
landed.
And I believe they're gonna go back to Houston. I don't know if they're gonna land.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they land in Houston. And then I think this even lands in a different way than the prior shuttles. I can't remember.
The old shuttle was a glider.
Yeah.
So it entered the atmosphere and literally glided to its destination.
This one's like a capsule, and it's literally just gonna drop down on whatever. And again, the impressiveness of the boosters landing exactly where they said they would land. One of them landing on a barge in the middle of the ocean, and you hit this moving target. Like, listen. And I know it's more than Elon Musk, but it's his vision that put this together, and he obviously had to put the right people in place. Much like we do with athletes, we don't appreciate them when they're here, right? And it's only when we look back on it fondly and go, man, that guy was crazy. Elon Musk, we're going to look back on this guy and go, wow, we lived through the Nikola Tesla, we lived through the Edison, we lived through the Albert Einstein. We witnessed one of the greatest minds of our generation, and I don't know that we appreciate that as much right now as we will in 30 or 40 years when we're telling our grandkids, like, we used to put gas in cars, right. I think Elon Musk is such, and you want to talk about burden, about pressure, what must that be like if you're him, to be that intelligent and go and feel, and I'm sure he feels a sense of maybe of duty, of having that he needs to do these things for mankind, quote unquote, because maybe he feels like he's the only person capable or smart enough to do this stuff, right? Like it's just so impressive to watch, man. And he's someone that I cheer for. I hope that, with the Neuralink thing, you've already seen him do it with Tesla. I mean, he said it could be done. It's been done. I wouldn't be shocked if you start getting cars in the $20,000 range from Tesla at some point in time. And then to do this with SpaceX, he will definitely be on the moon, will definitely be on Mars. I
have no doubt that we're going.
Zero.
I mean, right? Like
Zero.
The moon and Mars, like it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Is it gonna be flawless? Probably not.
No.
But like he's gonna make it happen.
You're gonna lose things and people maybe along the way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's gonna happen. And like while we're on that, I couldn't help but think when I'm watching those guys strapped to, however many thousands of pounds of fuel that is, and you're just shooting them up, you're basically slingshotting them towards another little satellite in the air and going, I hope you get there. I couldn't help but think about the first person to have done that way back when, and the first person to do anything. How ballsy that must be. Can you imagine back then where you go, we're going to strap you to this. We think we're going to build up enough force to shoot you into orbit, and hopefully you're going to get to the moon. And then it's like, well, what happens if we don't? How do I get back? We don't know. You may float in space forever, but you got to assume that you're going up there with the idea of, I don't know if I'm coming back. It's 50-50.
Right.
And if you ask any of us right now, hey, man, would you hop in that car and just get slingshotted down the street and 50-50 chance you make it back to where you started? Will we take those odds? Hell no. So shout out to the first guy to ever do anything.
Absolutely. and I guess the way they make it happen is, right, they get some really brave guys.
Yep.
And then you get really smart people to go into the room and say big words.
Yep, and reassure those guys.
That's right. You reassure those brave guys that, yep, we got this. Don't worry.
But
Just get in the capsule.
Elon blew up one of the, it didn't have people on, but one of his payloads or a test rocket, it blew up.
Like recently.
Yeah, like within the last couple of years, it went up and it failed, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we know what went wrong, X, Y, Z," and they go back, and now you're those guys. You're trusting that the math works, right? Like that's what it boils down to. You're trusting that the math works. You put, you want to talk about people working together. This is the ultimate test of individuals putting their trust in each other and working together to accomplish something. Because again, you're not strapping me to thousands of tons of fuel if I don't trust that you did the math right. And, it's just, I think, we were talking about some heavy stuff earlier, but I think it's just it's just one example of when we're together, man, and we trust in each other and we feel like you've got my back and I've got yours, the shit you can accomplish. Because I remember watching Elon on a press conference the morning of the scrapped one, and he had this look on his face. And Elon is a pretty confident guy when you see him talk, right? He's got the swagger. He's clearly doesn't lack confidence. And he had this look on his face of a guy who went, or a guy who was worried, and not worried because I think he knew that they had done their job. But I think with a situation like this there's a lot of unknowns. Like it's an experiment, right? And he had the look on his face of a guy who was going, I hope this works. I have the confidence in my team, but like this isn't I blow up a rocket ship. This is I blow up a rocket ship and two guys go with it. And he made a comment about someone asked him how it felt. Did he feel a sense of pressure or of responsibility? And he said, absolutely. And then he said, well, when did that kick in? He goes, well, it was always there, but it was heightened by the fact that I just had to look at their kids. And he was talking about the astronauts. He said, I just had to look in their eyes and promise them I'm doing everything I can to bring their dads back safely. And I go, wow, man, what must that be like to look at, like someone's kids and they go like, hey, and obviously there's probably some excitement behind that, but you to look at those kids and go, fuck, man, if we didn't do our job, they're never going to see their dad again. That's right. Like that hug that they just gave him before they got on that rocket ship is the last hug. It's the last thing they're going to remember. And the pressure that comes with that, man, is insane. And I think someone like Elon Musk, not only the intelligence, but just the bravery and the bravery of that team to be able to move forward and be willing to take us to that next step as humanity is just insane, man. It's just a ton of respect for that.
And the other piece of that when they were interviewing him about, what if it fails and, that kind of stuff, right? And the media always wants to know what happens if something goes bad. He goes, if this is successful, it's a credit to SpaceX. And if it's not, it's my fault, right? Like that is like every successful entrepreneur, it's just like everything is my fault.
Everything's my fault, man.
And to be able to take that on and to take it on and accept it, right? Like this is not something that just put on you, and like to take it on, accept it and take that responsibility, man, just speaks to him as a human.
Yeah. Leadership 101, man. It's everything's your fault, right? And then all the good stuff is your people. And that guy, yeah, embodies that, and you could tell he meant it, and I think meant it from I think he was legitimately taking responsibility for if this goes south, it is on me. But I think also understanding the magnitude of the situation of it's not going to say on the news, SpaceX rocket, blows up with 2 men on board. It's going to say Elon Musk's SpaceX rocket. And his name is plastered all over it. And I think,
I thought that was interesting that you just said that, because when I watched the thing go up, and it was funny because my kids were there, and one of my kids he's kind of an Elon Musk fan, if you will, right? He loves Teslas and is interested in the SpaceX and what have you. Everything that we were seeing in the beginning was NASA. NASA. And then so I had to explain to him just like, well, SpaceX is sort of the subcontractor that has the rockets, but NASA sort of the overseeing, that has all the rules and regulations of but then I had to show him on the screen, like, look, like, see the X, like there they are. And then as we watched it more and more, then you see more of the SpaceX stuff in there. But I smiled because I was like, man, it reminded me when I worked there. It was like, in my opinion, United Space Alliance was the ones like doing everything. Like NASA was sort of the overseers, right? We had to sort of get things past NASA.
So what did they do at United? Did they actually build the shuttle? What was the job of United Space Alliance? I guess I've never heard
that space shuttle program. Like it was theirs. Like that was they were the ones that maintained it, that did the launches. Like that was the company. We were the SpaceX.
So they did everything. They basically subcontracted with the government, and then okay. Yeah, I had never heard. I think until you told me that you worked there, I had never heard of them. But it goes to show, NASA is always the ones kind of at the forefront.
NASA's always the name on it. And a matter of fact, when the president was speaking, and he was congratulating NASA and naming some individuals, I was waiting there going like, dude, you better say something about SpaceX and Elon Musk, man, because without those guys, like, this just doesn't happen.
It's the first public-private, right? Or it's the first privately built spacecraft, right, that gets to the space station, which is, I think this opens up the space tourism thing. This opens up, I know they want to build like a hotel in space, basically, similar to the space station. They want to put up a hotel in space, and then they're going to take people up there. And believe you...
Probably won't be in our lifetime.
I think so.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. I think...
So you think in the next, say, 50 years?
Oh, absolutely. I think there will be a low orbit, like, space station type thing, and you're going to be able to spend a week on that thing and then go.
You know what? It takes long, right? Because you have to constantly launch materials up there to build that.
Within the next 5, so I don't know if you heard the story about Tom Cruise wanting to film a movie in space, like legitimately in space. So what they're trying to do is get Tom Cruise to the ISS, and then he's going to film a movie inside of the ISS. I think that shit will happen. I think first of all, man, I love Tom Cruise because he does his own stunts and he does all kinds of crazy shit. But I think if anyone is nutty enough to go,
skydives.
He does. We do too, by the way. And if anyone is ballsy enough to go, I'll get on a rocket and I'll shoot myself up there. And then obviously you send them up with 2 or 3 astronauts or whatever. And then I think Tom Cruise will do that. I think within the next 5 years you'll see Tom Cruise on a rocket up in space. Assuming, something crazy doesn't happen to him. But if that guy says, hey, I want to film a movie up there, and Elon Musk is like, yeah, I want to make that happen, I think there isn't a bigger win for someone like Elon Musk than to go, I put that guy safely on the ISS.
Well, it's got to be him, the other actors, the film crew.
Well, I think it'll just, they'll figure out a way to do it where it's just him, and maybe they take cameras up there and they make these astronauts do like some kind of filming or something. I don't know. But maybe they send a second person with him. Or just put cameras.
I'm assuming it's already there.
Well, did you see the docking? These guys had like 15 cameras and they had them set up, and they're talking about the audio. They're like, oh, you got to hook up this mic to line this and that. So clearly they have some kind of capability to do stuff.
But I mean, like movie quality.
Yeah.
Cameras.
Well, maybe you send them up. You're right. Maybe you send them up. Maybe you take a volunteer, and there's going to be a guy who volunteers. I think if I'm a cameraman and that opportunity comes up, I'd do it. I think if you see Elon do that enough, I think you feel confident in the ability to get there. But I think it'll happen, man. I think 50 years. I think by the time we are 56 years old, I think you'll see tourism, space tourism for sure.
Well, remember, you're like 12 years behind me.
Yeah, so not by the time you're 50. By the time you 89.
Yeah. So by the time that I'm trying to retire.
So in my lifetime, let me take that back. But for sure, man, I think you will. I think this is that first step in progress. Like things roll. And I don't want to compare this to like an iPhone because it's stupid, right? But I think once you see the first iteration of it and it works, you're like, oh, okay, it can be done. And I think progress picks up really quickly after that. I think that's what you'll see with this. And I think, again, this was a win for Elon. I think that the proof of concept is there now. And I think what has to happen now, because they said they can do it, I don't want to say cheaply, but it's like half the price of what it cost before to do this because of the fact that he can recycle the boosters and stuff.
Yeah, I want to say it was, well, I know that I believe the Russians were charging the U.S. like 80 million like per seat. Yep. And I want to say it's like 50 million, like 55, something like that. No.
And so I think we'll get to the point where we're doing this almost monthly or bi-monthly.
Well, he's going again in what, August?
Yeah. So
the next one?
I think you'll keep doing these, right? And then you'll go, oh shit, okay, like once you can get a couple of these and you get comfortable, then eventually you just go, all right, man, let's start putting stuff in. Because I think by 2025, the idea is they're going to start not only going to the moon, but they're going to the moon and they're sending parts, and maybe parts are already there to build like a colony on the moon. So I think in our lifetime, we'll see that. And I think the moon then becomes the experiment for can we live on Mars, and then Mars is next. And listen, I'm not smart enough to go, you figure eventually Earth's going somewhere, right? Like the shit can't last forever. So maybe that is the next step of humanity is you inhabit another planet. but it's gonna happen, man. I think we'll see it in our formative years, but yeah, it's gonna happen, man. And shout out to the people just enjoy it while you're watching, because this is remarkable. I think it's hard to understand it at the time and to take it and look at it and go, like, we almost take it for granted, right? Because it's happening while we're here, and we're kind of so used to seeing these impressive things now. This is like one of these things that will be in history books and things like that forever. I think when you look back at Elon and go, what he meant to mankind is gonna be just I think something that you're not going to be able to put into words. It's wild, man.
Yeah, and if you don't follow this guy, he had there's other companies. Obviously, you should know about Tesla by now. There's that is it Neuralink? Is that the company?
Neuralink, yep.
It's the company, and I think we're probably out of time, even though we don't have a time.
Yeah, we can do an entire episode on Neuralink, and maybe we'll do that.
I really do. Like, if you haven't looked up, Neuralink and the things that they're doing. Look that up. It's super interesting, and the things that they're going to be able to do with diseases that have plagued humanity for a long time is remarkable if it works.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. And man, reach out to your brown and black friends, man. Give them hugs. Like, let's throw some positive vibes out there instead of questioning the rioting. Ask how we got there in the first place, and let's let's work to getting better together, man. Send some positive vibes out there, people. And thank you guys for listening. We're on all major streaming platforms now. So Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, you name it, we're there. If we're not somewhere that you like, hit us up. If you got some topics, hit us up. But we appreciate you guys all listening.
Yeah, we definitely do. If anybody that's listening out there, obviously we have some friends and family that are supporting us, and shout out to you guys for listening. But anyone else out there, like, if you're listening, that's awesome. Like,
yeah,
we never
all three of you guys, I don't care.
Right,
it's awesome.
It.
Yeah. And we were certainly appreciative and enjoy getting to do this once a week. And if you hear some birds in the background today, because we're recording outside, we decided to change the scenery a little. So we're having a glass of wine out on the patio and recording this. So it's fun times. I think we might make this a norm. Get a video camera out here where we can see something. But and obviously it's hot as hell in Florida, so we're gonna have to figure this out. But this was a good time.
Awesome.
Shout out to you guys, man. Peace.
Later.